Some people will say that it is, but others will say it's not. How do you make the case for it being realistic?
By manifesting it.
Well, what you're basically saying is, I'll know when it's realistic as to whether or not I can do it. But I think your situational analysis of looking at things like resource personnel and all this other stuff should go into determining whether it's realistic or not. But the other point that you make by actually doing it, strategic planning tells you what's realistic and what isn't. And you have to be ready to fall on your face a few times and say, you know what? We tried, we set a goal, but it wasn't realistic. And this happened a lot of times at my old job. I used to call them SMART goals. They were strategic, they were measurable, they were accountable, they were not realistic. The R was missing. But I think over time, the more strategic planning you do, the better you get at actually knowing what's a realistic goal and what isn't. Crowley tells us that there are a great many people who quite misunderstand the nature of magic. They have an idea that it is something vague and unreal instead of being, as it is, a direct means of coming into contact with reality. It is these people who pay themselves with phrases and who are always using long words with no definite connotation, who plaster themselves with pompous titles and decorations which mean absolutely nothing whatsoever. With such people, we have nothing to do. I think this is really a challenging part of doing strategic planning for occultists because we're not always that into reality. And Crowley is telling us magic is really about reality. So that's the part we need to, I think, look at most seriously and figure out what's realistic and what isn't. And be ready to make mistakes and say, okay, look, we thought this was a realistic goal. Maybe it wasn't. And be all right with that. For a long time, Crowley has said that his work attracted too many dilettantes and eccentrics, weaklings seeking an escape in magic from reality. And that's the thing that we're really working to overcome. Lastly, we have any SMART goal has to be on a timeline. Why? Why should it be on a timeline? I've just said earlier that strategic planning is endless. What's the point? Why have it on a timeline?
If you want a measurable goal, you need to know when to measure it.
Right. When does the measuring come? Right? Oh, we're going to increase the membership. Well, it's been decreasing. There's no time limit. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it may go up. You can't say that didn't work. There can be no evaluation at any point as to whether the goal succeeded or not if there isn't a timeline set for it. Does that mean that if you come to the end of the timeline and the goal isn't met, that you beat yourself up? No. That's part of flexibility. You may extend the goal and say, oh, we needed a longer timeline, or you may change the goal and say it didn't work out and pick something else. But you have to have a timeline. And that's why goal setting is often cyclical. You set periods throughout the year, maybe on the solstices, maybe on the equinoxes, to review the goals, look at new ones, and go back through this whole process again. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to conclude this, and I thank you for your kind attention, with a quote from Martin Heidegger. He said, "Whether the West still dares to create a goal above itself and its history, or whether it prefers to sink to the level of the preservation and enhancement of trade interests and entertainments, to be satisfied with appealing to the status quo as if this were absolute." And that, I think, is a challenge, not just for the OTO and for Theory on Babylon Oasis, but for the entirety of Western civilization. Can we still actually posit goals, or are we just going to accept the status quo and go into the movies as if it was an absolute that we could never escape? So, I thank you for your kind attention.
I hope everybody enjoyed that lecture from Keith 418. I think it's wonderful that we can go out and we can take things that seem antithetical to magic but actually aren't. Things like goals and planning and strategic planning and all of these other kind of tools and incorporate them in our magical practices to allow us to manifest greater things. So thanks to Keith 418 for helping kind of give an idea on how to do that with strategic planning. And thanks to the folks at Theory on Babylon Oasis who allowed Thelema Coast to Coast to broadcast this lecture. Especially thanks to Peggy for recording it and Chris, the body master out there, for allowing the broadcast. This brings us to the end of show 32. I hope everybody enjoyed this lecture. As I said, show 33 will be a lecture that I gave at Dove and Serpent Oasis in July about Crowley's ontology. Before I go, though, I want to let everybody know that I have a personal blog. Some people have been asking about my blog and how it was restricted from public and things like that. I've created a public blog where I talk about the various aspects of Thelema, the Thelemic community, Thelemic philosophy, and so forth. That can be read at www.thelema.nu. And that's where I kind of go and take some ideas about Thelema and the Thelemic community and really kind of put them through various critical processes, and I write about my ideas. So I appreciate all kinds of feedback on there. It's been going, the website has been out there since mid-July, and I post stuff every few days on it. So I encourage you all to go out and check it out. All right, for the closing song, it is an interesting song that was done by Sobek. It actually takes Crowley's recording of doing the poem At Sea, 3 Hymns for Man, and puts it to music. So it's a very short tune, and since this is a long show, I figured it was good to have a small little closing tune. But it's nice to have kind of the acoustic background music to a very good poem. So here is Sobek and Crowley doing At Sea. And thanks again for listening to the show. I hope you stick around for the next one. Love's the law. Love under will.
As light have stars, more rare than ships in ocean, faith from pole to pole, so all the wonder of her lips hints her innavigable soul. Such light she gives to guide my path, but I am swallowed in the swell of her heart's ocean, fatally dark. The soul of my heaven, the soul of my hell. In her I live among my new dancing moments in the sun. In her I die, a sterile shoot of nitrate in oblivion. In her myself dissolves, a grain of salt tossed careless in the sea. My passion purifies my pain to peace past personality. Love of my life, God grant the earth, confirm the prison, road to rule. Anointing love, a spurging tear in the sanctifying solitude. Man is so infinitely small in all these stars, determinate, maker and the molder of them all. Man is so infinite.